You know, some leaders, they shape a decade, others maybe a century. But every once in a while, you get someone whose destiny seems like it was written in stone long before they were even born. Today, we're diving into the story of one of those leaders, Sultan Mehmed II, a man whose ambition was, and I mean this literally, prophesied.
So get this. For 800 years, this one sentence echoed through the Islamic world. It was a promise, a challenge, and for one young prince, it became a complete, lifelong obsession. This single prophecy would become the fuel for one of the most incredible military campaigns in all of history.
So who was this prince who felt he was destined for greatness? Let's take a look at the early years that shaped this young man, a man with a vision so powerful it would end up redrawing the entire map of the world.
I mean, his rise to power was just unbelievably fast. Think about it for a second. He first becomes the Sultan at just 12 years old. 12! By the time he's 19, he's back on the throne for good, and he's already getting ready to take on an empire that had stood for 1,000 years.
Now, he wasn't just some royal figurehead, not at all. Mehmed was a legitimate intellectual powerhouse. I mean, speaking 6 languages is one thing, but his fluency in Greek and Latin, that wasn't just for showing off. It gave him direct access to ancient Roman and Byzantine texts on history and siege warfare. Talk about a crucial intelligence advantage. This wasn't just a warrior. This was a Renaissance man with an army.
So his first taste of power at age 12? Yeah, it was no gentle introduction. It was a true baptism by fire that would force him to make one of the boldest demands a son could ever make of his father.
Can you imagine being 12 and a whole coalition of European kingdoms, a crusader army, sees you as the weak link? They invade your territory thinking, hey, a kid on the throne? This'll be easy. That was the incredible pressure this young sultan was facing.
So his father, Murad II, had actually stepped down to retire. Mehmed was in charge. But facing this invasion, he sends his dad this absolutely brilliant letter. It's a masterclass in authority. He's basically saying, look, Dad, if you're the Sultan, it's your job to lead. If I'm the Sultan, then I'm ordering you to come lead. Either way you slice it, his father had to come back. And he did, crushing the Crusader.
All right, so when he returns to the throne for good at 19, Mehmed's focus narrows down to one single legendary target, Constantinople, the city whose walls had turned away every single attacker for centuries. But Mehmed wasn't just any attacker. He was an engineer of conquest.
He didn't just rush in. His approach was so systematic, it was like he was dismantling the city's defenses before the first shot was even fired. First, he built a massive fortress to cut off any help from the sea. Then, he used his own genius for math to design cannons bigger and more powerful than anything anyone had ever seen. He even invented a new kind of weapon, the humbara, which was basically an early version of the modern mortar.
Okay, so this was the defender's checkmate move. This giant, unbreakable chain stretched right across the mouth of the city's main harbor, the Golden Horn. This meant Mehmed's powerful fleet couldn't get anywhere near the most vulnerable seawalls. It seemed like a totally insurmountable problem.
And his solution? It was pure genius, bordering on absolute madness. If you can't get through the water, you go over the land. In a single night, his engineers laid down a road of grease logs, and his army physically dragged dozens of warships over land, around the chain, and dropped them right into the enemy's harbor. Can you imagine the shock the defenders felt waking up to that?
So with his fleet now behind enemy lines and his super cannons pounding the walls day and night, the stage was set. Let's get to the moment a 21-year-old sultan fulfilled that 800-year-old prophecy and brought a 1,000-year-old empire to its knees.
53. That's how many days the city held out. For 53 brutal, relentless days of fighting and bombardment, the defenders resisted. But then, on May 29, 1453, the unthinkable happened. The legendary walls were breached, the city fell, and a brand new era had begun.
But you know, his actions after the battle were just as revealing. He walked into the great church, the Hagia Sophia, where thousands of citizens were hiding, terrified, expecting a massacre. Instead, he delivered this message. It showed he wasn't just a conqueror. He was a statesman, ready to build a new order based on tolerance, not on terror.
But the fall of Constantinople wasn't the end of his story. Not even close. It was really just the beginning. Now we're going to look at how the conqueror built a true empire and left behind a mystery that we still puzzle over to this day.
I mean, the scale of his ambition becomes crystal clear when you just look at the numbers. In his 30-year reign, he more than doubled the size of the Ottoman Empire. He didn't just conquer a city, he absorbed 2 empires, 4 kingdoms, and 11 principalities. The pace of his expansion was just relentless.
And his legacy was so multifaceted. He was a warrior who personally led 25 military campaigns. He was a lawmaker who created the very first Ottoman legal code. He was a master of secrecy. He famously said, "If a single hair on my beard knew my secret, I would pluck it out." And he was a patron of the arts and sciences, turning his new capital into a global center for culture.
But after surviving no fewer than 14 attempts on his life, his reign came to this sudden, really mysterious end. In 1481, he gathered the biggest army of his entire rule. We're talking 300,000 men for a brand new campaign. And then he suddenly died.
And this is the question that just leaves us all hanging. Historians are almost certain he was poisoned, but the target of that massive army, that's a secret he took to his grave. Was he going for Italy? Maybe to march on Rome itself, like so many people feared? We'll never know. And that leaves us with one of history's most tantalizing what-ifs.